Welcome to the Creative Soul Summit. I'm your host, Devin Walls, abstract painter, creative guide, and a true believer in the transformative power of making art. Having an art practice has been the most freeing and healing thing in my life, and I'm so passionate about inspiring others to begin and to deepen their creative journey, to remind them that they are creative beings with gifts just waiting to come out. I've gathered 20 women from all different creative fields to talk about how their creative journey has changed their life, how they stay inspired, how they deal with self-doubt, and we're also going to talk about all things self-discovery, freedom, and healing through art. Today, I'm talking with Zoe Howarth. Zoe is such a sweet soul, and I love the way she prioritizes her intuition and her creative practice. For those of you who don't know Zoe, she studied at London College of Fashion and then Falmouth University of Arts. She graduated in 2010 with a BA degree in textile design. She's been on a creative journey ever since, which includes having been a textile designer, knitwear designer, silversmith, jeweler, teacher, and now artist. She finally decided to follow her spiritual calling in May 2015, which was when she set up her Instagram account, Sacred Wild Soul. This was really the beginning of something special, and she finally found a place where her creativity and spirituality could sit comfortably side by side. In the last year, she has intuitively created 2 oracle decks using her artwork and photographs. I know you're going to love this conversation and walk away feeling inspired to follow your own calling. Without further ado, I present to you my conversation with Zoe. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Creative Soul Summit. Today I have Zoe Howarth on with us of Sacred Wild Soul. And Zoe is the creator of these gorgeous tarot decks. So I'm really excited to have her on and to find out more about what goes into these decks. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Zoe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So just to start us off, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get into making tarot decks? Or they're oracle decks.
This
Sorry.
is not a linear journey whatsoever. So this is, I guess, quite nice to feel like actually you can do anything whenever you want, whenever you feel like it. You can change direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I started off basically as a textile designer. That's what my degree is in, textile design. So I started my creative career doing that. And then I followed this meandering path of trying to figure out who I am and what I'm about, what I wanted to do. I worked for a knitwear designer for a while, so again, doing textile-based things. And then I suddenly, it was when I had my little boy, actually, I wanted to still keep creating while I was at home. But the textile stuff just took up way too much time. So I then got into jewelry making. So I did that avenue for a couple of years. And then I really felt like there was something massive that was missing from my life. And it didn't matter how creative I was or what projects I did. I was just denying this massive kind of spiritual side of me. So that's when I started my Sacred Wild Soul account. And that was literally just to have somewhere that I could be my spiritual self. I had nowhere in my life before that where I could really dive straight into that.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did that, it just opened this, I don't know, explosion of rainbows. So I can imagine it. Over the following year, so that was May, not May just gone, the one before. So it's not been very long, really, just over a year. I've just been following this creative path with the spiritual kind of hand in hand. And it led me intuitively to make a deck. So it ended up being, I would create this artwork and I would kind of channel stuff as well, actually, do a lot of journaling. I journal every day. And then I suddenly had this idea, maybe I should make a deck and that would help me with my spiritual process as well, because I still felt really new to it. So that was where the deck came from, was that it was a tool for myself. And so I looked back through all my journaling, back through all the artwork I'd done, and then it ended up actually being things I already had that I pulled together to create a deck. So I kind of felt like it went backwards. way.
That's so
Um,
interesting.
yeah. And I find the creative process really strange like that. There is this kind of ebb and flow, like to and forward, and you can't force it. I found if I've ever tried to force something, it just doesn't work the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I made my Oracle deck, that was the first time I've really kind of stepped into that process of letting the intuition actually guide the work instead of my logical brain, which always wants to take over, always wants to know what's on the to-do list, let's tick things off.
Right.
So it was a real like inner process for me as well. So yeah, it's kind of feels like a really meandering path, and sometimes I look back and I think, oh my goodness, how on earth did I get here?
Right. Yeah, things are funny like that when you just like follow things that you have a feeling about but don't make logical sense. So I totally resonate with
Yeah.
that. And something I wanted to ask you about, and you kind of touched on it actually in your story, is, what was that like kind of coming out as this like spiritual person and merging that with your creative projects? Because before that you were doing, like you said, like textile and jewelry. And I'm wondering if that was a bit of a journey for you at all.
Yeah, massively. And it was really, really scary.
Yeah.
And initially I didn't realize what was going on. So the only way I can describe it is a bit like Clark Kent and Superman. And so in my everyday life at home, everyone here knows me as a jeweler, and like I teach jewelry classes. So that was my Clark Kent. And then they didn't know that actually in the mornings I get up and I do my spiritual routine, and I connect online to all these amazing people all over the world with my Sacred Wild Soul. And that was actually what I was spending majority of my energy doing. And so there was this weird kind of, I don't know, process going on as well, where I'd done so much inner work that my outer world still needed to catch up with it. And so it was really strange. I kind of felt like I was coming out, actually.
Right. Yeah.
To people. So, yeah, I had to be brave, and there was a few of my close friends initially that I told them about it, and I showed them my deck and explained like this is what I was doing, and they absolutely loved it. But I was so terrified within myself. So,
right.
Yeah, that was a really strange kind of inner battle. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Absolutely. So do you feel like now that you've started putting out this work more online, like your life is kind of caught up a little bit and like you're able to be that self in your actual life as well? Or is it still kind of like a push and pull?
It's a bit of a push and pull, although I got to a point where I was doing so much that I realized I was doing too much and that something had to give. So this is where I needed to be honest with myself about where things were going and where I wanted things to go. So it was only about a month, maybe 2 months ago, that I finally kind of not put an end to my jewelry business, but announced to people that I'm not really focusing on that anymore, and I've changed direction. Because I really want to give my spiritual and creative projects all the energy they deserve, basically.
Yeah.
And that's where my enthusiasm is now as well. So you've got to follow your passion.
Yeah.
I've definitely learned that the hard way of trying to do things creatively that have been on the to-do list for a while. And this is how I'd felt with the jewelry when I said that it just wasn't working, and that something felt like it was missing. I'd really been trying to make it work, and the more I pushed, the harder it was to do, and the more I started to really lose the passion for it, and it just fell apart basically in the end. But out of the chaos of that,
right,
all this new work was born. So yeah, it's been kind of full of ups and downs,
Right.
the creative process.
Yeah. And, I think that's really interesting because I've heard a similar thread in other people's stories about, they were already doing something creative. Like jewelry is still an art, but it's like that soulful piece that really wanted to come forward. So it's like you're called to even go farther with your art. So I just think that that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about like the process behind creating an oracle deck. And you mentioned it a little bit that you kind of went backwards into your stuff, but I'm wondering if there's any more there because I imagine there's this visual component and then there's this teaching spiritual component as well. And so, yeah, what was the process like kind of trying to piece that all together?
I think this was also where my design background had come in and was kind of like a transferable skill. So turns out I knew quite a lot of these things already, like color palettes and compositions and, like just generally how things need to be laid out, how they need to look, how they need to flow together. So these were skills I already had, which then really helped, I think, with the designing bit. Because it was almost second nature to be able to pull it all together as one piece. But quite honestly, this has been a really intuitive lesson as well. So this has helped my intuition grow because a lot of the artwork I already had. So I would pull that out and just learn and how that was going to speak to me. And that would help me with the words and likewise the journaling. There were already within my reams of journaling, there was already all these lessons in there, all these, snippets, and it was just teasing them all out. So it didn't take very long. I think I had the proof of my first one within a week because I literally had all the work already.
Wow.
So within a week of the idea of the deck, I kind of had the first draft, if you call it that, together. So yeah, it was, but this again was where I was really in the flow with making, and it really just came easily and it pieced itself together. And I wasn't trying to make it, into a product, and I wasn't labeling it something that, needed to be ticked off my to-do list. So it really helped with it. Just, it came together really beautifully. But yeah, as for the logistics of, doing things on the computer and thinking about your spacing and there's a lot of logistical things that need to go into that. And, and each card needing, well, it's a bit like making an art collection, isn't it? Each one needing to relate to the other and working together as a whole. So but I think being in that flow, I've got this kind of, I call it my impossible triangle.
Okay.
So this is something I came up with, and this is where I've got money and creativity and intuition at the top. So my intuition is at the top. These three things flow really beautifully, and it just works really well. But then I guess it's part of my inner critic, but that logical brain who wants to kick in, and try and control things and figure out, what's this for? Where's it going? So as soon as the triangle tips and money becomes the focus, so then the intuition slips to the bottom, suddenly everything falls apart and it just doesn't work the same. It doesn't have the same flow. Even trying to make money out of it just is really hard work. So I'm always quite mindful of my impossible triangle of trying to keep money out of the top and tip it back so it's the intuition that is leading the way for my work. So that's definitely part of my creative process as well, because obviously creativity is in there all the time.
Yeah, that's a really perfect image. I love that. And you're right. I think that's really true. But the interesting thing about it is it's like money is still part of the flow equation. And so it's like you have intuition at the top, like first and foremost. I'm processing what you're saying. But yet in order for the whole thing to flow, it's like they do all three kind of work together. So I think that's interesting, but it's also so easy to have it tip the wrong way.
Yeah.
and have
sometimes
to
you don't even notice it's tipped as well until it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just such a lesson in just keep continuing to come back to the listening. So I think that's really amazing. I love that. So
Definitely.
something I wanted to ask about your decks, and I know on your website it says this, is that you chose to omit the guidebook part of the Oracle decks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love Oracle decks. And and most of the ones I have come with a guidebook. So I'm really interested as to why you made that choice.
Okay, so I've become quite addicted to decks now, and if you see my feed, my Sacred Wild Soul feed, quite often I'll do a reading where I'll pull one card, but from say 3 or 4 different decks. And when I've got different cards from different decks laid down, I just personally find it easier to read that as a whole. If I've then got to go and find 4 different guidebooks, it then becomes a bit messy. So
Right.
this was totally like the way that I work. It fitted with me, that I just like to be able to look at a spread and intuitively know what it's trying to tell me, or the questions it's trying to pull out of me, or issues that are coming up. So that's why on my cards they have the picture and then the theme of the card, and then at the bottom there's a few notes. So usually there's like a question or a little description about the card, so it's right there. So as soon as you pull it, you can then start working with that, and the idea is that those few sentences then pull from your intuition. So it's all about you reading the card and not what the guidebook tells you the answer is. It's all about you. Because I think we need to learn to trust ourselves more. And again, this comes back to my artwork, where working intuitively with painting, and that's really helped me to trust my intuition, because when you're painting, you kind of have to listen to, what does the painting want next? What's the next thing that needs to come onto the page or the canvas? And so I think, learning to trust that actually you do have the answers, they are there, and
Right.
without needing permission from someone, which I often feel like the guidebook becomes that permission, which is fine and it's great. And I do have a lot of decks where I do have guidebooks.
Right.
But I just like that spontaneity of, just pulling the card and letting the answers flow. So, yeah.
I absolutely resonate with that. Yeah, because you do become like you hang on the words of the guidebooks instead of letting your own wisdom come forward. So I could totally see why that works, to just go off your intuition in the card. Yeah, I love that. So kind of going back to that triangle image that you brought forth, and creativity is on there. And I'm wondering, so your 2 decks are out now. You have 2 that are currently available, right? So do you have like a creative practice that's just for you that you tend to bring forth new ideas? I know you're also a mom. So I'm wondering like how you balance and how you prioritize creative time in your life.
Yeah, that's a good one. My son has now started school, so at least I now have the days where I can work, which is really nice. And honestly, looking back, I don't really know how I managed to juggle everything whilst he was still at home. I think this is why I ended up starting making jewelry when he was quite tiny, because it was something I could do for 10 minutes and put down. And then when he was napping or playing or something, I could come back to for 10 minutes and keep working at. So definitely a juggling act, definitely. But yeah, I don't know if all creative people are like this, but I still feel like a beginner. So
I think we all feel like that, yeah.
The more work I do, the more I feel like I'm still trying to find my style.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out what I'm about. And so my creative practice, is always ongoing. It does change quite a bit. My attention span isn't great. If I've lost the passion for something, I can't force myself to go with it. And sometimes that's a good thing, because I know I need to change it up. And as soon as I do that, it just opens a whole new door before. So the last couple of weeks, I've been taking my sketchbook outside. So I go for a walk, like go down to the beach. I went down this morning, took my sketchbook, and I've been drawing the patterns in the rocks or just anything like that, really. So it's always this conversation, I think, with the world around you, with my intuition, and then with my connection and how I feel about that. So yeah, I still feel like a beginner.
Yeah, I think that's common. You know, I also feel like it's like the more you dive into something, the more is revealed that you still have to learn. So it's almost like the farther into it you go, which is really humbling and exciting. But you do, I know that I definitely have that same feeling as well. So I totally hear you.
Yeah. Which is great, because then you also know that the possibilities are endless, and there's never going to be that thing of, oh, how am I ever going to come up with all these ideas to keep working for the next 20 years? It just, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Like, there will be things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So coming to the end of the conversation, something I really want to know is what advice you would have for someone who feels like they have this calling, like they're being called in another direction, kind of like you did. What advice would you have for them? Like if they just feel like they don't know how to go about it or what to do about it?
Okay, there's a couple of things. The first thing is to trust. First of all, trust that knowing inside of you, because I ignored mine for about 2 or 3 years, first of all. So trust that you actually do have the answers, and that it's going to be okay. It's okay to do this thing which might seem a bit crazy, to diverge from what is your path at the moment, because where it's leading you will become your path. So things don't need to be linear. But the other thing is to just do the work as well. Just make sure whatever it is that you want to be doing, or you feel called to be bringing into your life, just start doing it. And even if it's 10 minutes a day, it's something. And I really feel like life's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And it's like a stepping stone effect. So you have to take the first step for the next step to be revealed sometimes. So you very much need to just put one foot in front of the other, and there's no rush at all. These things will happen in their own time. So it's scary, and it's normal for it to be scary. So don't beat yourself up about that, but just do the work, go for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that there's no rush, because I think that we all feel like we urgently want to change our situation, but it really is about the journey, and that can be so hard to hear in the moment. But I think that that's true as well. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for having this conversation with me, Zoe. I think that your work is such a blessing, and I think that the fact that you really prioritize that listening and intuitive part in your life really comes through in your work. So I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before I ask the final question, where can people find more of you? Do you have anything coming up that you'd like to talk about? And we'll link everything below.
You can look at my decks, buy my decks from my website. So that's www.sacredwildsoul.com. Obviously, the majority of my content is on my Instagram, so definitely follow me on my Instagram feed. Again, that's just at Sacred Wild Soul. I've got a few things in the pipeline that are coming. More of my little creative cutouts, which I use, like my feathers, which is a big kind of symbol that I use for my layouts. So a few things like that which are coming. Possibly another deck, but not for a while yet, but I can feel one coming on. So
cool.
Watch this space.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be on the lookout for that. And seriously, her Instagram is perfectly curated. Before we were on this call, she let me know that her birthday is tomorrow, and we're in Virgo season. I was saying that it just makes perfect sense because your feed is so perfectly curated. It's beautiful. So yeah, I love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, quite. Yeah.
Yeah. So The final question that I have is, what do you love about being an artist?
I love the sense of adventure and that every day is completely different and you don't know where it's going most of the time. And each week you don't really know where you're going to end up. And I love that. Yeah. Full of possibility.
Yes, full of possibility. I totally agree. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you again, Zoe, for being here. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.